The older Freddie, it's more machismo, shorter haircut,
Yeah.
the mustache, and younger Freddie, it's more flamboyant and
Yeah.
the wig, longer hair, wilder costumes.
Yeah, yeah, costume. I was so afraid of the costumes at first because I mean, you get out
Why?
there in a sequin leotard and it doesn't leave much to
cat
the
suit.
imagination. Yes, it's a cat suit, and yeah, it's difficult because I had put on weight for a Live Aid and then sequin suit, and 2 days later, I know it doesn't look that different, but it was for me in front of a camera. I'll tell you this, I saw The Theory of Everything, and I love the makeup in that and what
Eddie
Eddie
Redmayne.
Redmayne did. He's the one that that informed me to use a movement coach. Not him personally, but watching him in that. That's where I learned that a movement coach even existed. But then Jan Sewell, I sought out because she was his makeup artist on that. And she did a remarkable job. I mean, I think I had 6 different wigs in that.
And you also had
she straightened out my
the
nose.
and
There's
also
a nose prosthetic because he had a very sharp nose and I have a wider nose, and I can barely ever.
and also
lose
the
myself.
teeth.
Yes, of course, the teeth. The teeth I asked for about a year prior, and there would be days when I would come home from Mr. Robot and put the teeth in, have a black hoodie on, and I was just like, this is too much. This is too much. This is going to mess around with your head, man.
But one of the remarkable things watching the performance, and you were not shooting chronologically, but at first you're so uncomfortable, the younger Freddie is so uncomfortable with the teeth. And then as by the time we get to Live Aid, you're physically comfortable and kind of emboldened by the teeth.
Yeah.
Is it, how did you calibrate it that?
I've tried to very much measure it and keep a very strict kind of diary of where that was in terms of his comfort factor or ease with himself. And I talked to his assistant, who's still around for a while, and he said, when he was at home and in private, he would smile ear to ear, and you couldn't believe how big they were. I mean, there's some pictures online, and if you catch them, he did a remarkable job of compensating for the way he looked. And I remember when I first put the teeth in, I felt myself very uncomfortable, but I compensated as well immediately. I started to sit up straight and hold myself with a little bit more posture and elegance, and I thought, oh, is that why he's so perfect when he's sitting, and is he compensating as well? And whether or not that was the truth, it informed me. Another thing is he does something so unusual. He covers his upper teeth with his lip, and he's constantly licking them if you watch interviews. And I didn't know how I was going to do that. Well, as soon as the teeth go in, you're going to cover those, and it's quite easy. So I tried to monitor that, and then going into editing, I made sure that the editor kept his eye on that comfortability factor as well, because oftentimes you get done with a film and they have no idea what you were working on. John Ottman did a great job, and I had excellent producers who let me give notes all the way through, which I really respect. It's not always the case. So yeah, it was about measuring him and how comfortable he was, and the style of the way he moved on stage in the 70s was very different from the 80s. But I'll tell you, by the end of the movie, as uncomfortable as I might have felt originally in that sequin suit, towards the end I said to Julian Day, the costume designer, do you think you can make me the sequin cat number in Ruby Red? And he laughed at me. I said, I'm not joking. It's a really good look.
What was it like having the original Queen members involved? I mean, they were on set. They were very much involved during the whole production. What was it like having them involved?
It's going to sound odd, but it was incredibly helpful. I think I did my best work when Brian May was around because it's odd. I mean, I'm playing Freddie and staying in character at work, mostly because it's fun being Freddie Mercury at work every day. But there are these surreal moments when, you know, older Brian May is having a conversation with me as a younger Freddie Mercury, and people are just, the whole crew is looking around like, what's going on here? But he was the most supportive he could have been, and it could have been the opposite way, where he questioned everything I was doing. It's you know, one of his closest friends and brothers and deepest loves, and that goes for Roger Taylor as well. So to have their approval was everything, and they had the final say in who played every one of them, everyone in the cast, and they saw my audition tape. I think they wanted to see more, so I went to Abbey Road Studios, and I worked with Polly, and I worked with a dialect coach named William Conacher, and I took singing lessons and piano lessons, and I did everything I possibly could to give them about a 10-minute version of me as Freddie in 2016, maybe. So I put on 4 songs at Abbey Road. They filmed me doing that, not Brian and Roger, but our team at Fox. And after that, Anthony McCartan, who wrote the film, who did The Darkest Hour and The Theory of Everything, and one of our producers, Dennis O'Sullivan, they started just throwing questions at me as if we were in a press conference. So I'd done the 4 songs. I thought it was over, and they go, Freddie, tell us what was it like growing up? And well, it was an upheaval of an upbringing, actually. And I was like, okay, starting to go into this. This is good. And at some point, you know, they asked me, you know, who's the person that you trust the most? And I answered that. It was question after question. I mean, they said, you know, why don't you have your teeth fixed? And, you know, I answered, well, I live in Britain. I don't want to stand out. And that gave me the ability throughout later on to actually improv a lot of lines. I felt very comfortable owning that sense of Freddie, and he gave me the strength and liberty to kind of be whatever I wanted to be whenever I wanted to do it when the camera was rolling. But the next day, and this was one of the most proud moments, is when we got out of Abbey Road. I thought, I don't know what's going to happen with this, but I feel really proud of myself, and I'm going to own this right now, because I did. And I went and took it to Roger Taylor's home, and they were to have seen it the night before, and Brian May was there, and they just opened the door. They greeted me for the first time, and I've met some big actors before, and you know, that doesn't really throw me, but meeting rock stars was like that. It got me shaking a little bit. Brian was very kind. Roger was difficult to suss out at first. We got talking. We had a glass of wine, and I'm trying to figure out what they thought of me. And I just couldn't read them. And that was because Brian says, well, I think it's time we watch your tape. And I said, well, what do you mean, watch my tape? You got it last night? He said, well, we couldn't download it, so maybe you could help us do that. You know, they'd seen Mr. Robot, so they figured that was going to be easy for me to do. And there I am, you know, 2 minutes later, standing in between Roger Taylor and Brian May, watching myself play Freddie Mercury. And I thought, well, this is a lose-lose right here. But I was so proud of it, I thought, let's see what they have to say. And I did the 4 songs, and Brian, halfway through, starts looking at me, and at one point he goes, it's uncanny. And I thought, oh my God, that's great. And I looked to Roger, still nothing. And we got to the part where they didn't even know this was happening, the press conference bit. And I started to answer questions as Freddie, and I could see them start to smile. And I said, okay, this is going good. And it came to the part where Dennis or Anthony, I can't remember who it was, asked me, well, who would you say you trust the most? Who's your closest friend, Freddie? And I think started to feel them both kind of look at me as if, and I couldn't remember what I said. And I was looking as intently as they were, and out came Mary. Oh, Mary's the person that I trust the most. And I waited, and I felt them both kind of look, and in a moment they went, yeah, all right, yeah, that sounds fair. So for a moment I thought, I'm gonna polarize this moment, but they both understood, and then they started sharing stories about Mary, and sharing stories about Freddie, and then we had a shot of tequila, and then we made the movie.
Great. That's awesome.